Hey there, Salt Strong Nation. This is Joe Simons, like diamonds, one of the co-founders here at Salt Strong. Now, if you've been following us for any amount of time, you may know that we have a podcast out there. The podcast is called the Fish Strong Podcast. It's on iTunes and Google Play. Please go subscribe and download it. And a lot of our subscribers have been asking, hey guys, can you actually record in video like you guys actually do in the podcast? And we looked into it and turns out that we can. So this is our first shot at actually recording us in video doing the podcast. So pretty pumped about it. And this podcast, I think you're going to love this one. We picked a great one to do it on. This is all about finding and catching consistent speckled trout in the wintertime. In particular, we really hammer home how to find the feeding zones right after a cold front comes through. So right after a cold front comes through, we're going to go through all the shortcuts and all the tactics on how to find the trout, how to get a trout to strike. And we're going to cover some of our own tactics. We're going to cover some of the things that we learned on Captain C.A. Richardson's Trout Mastery course, the ones that we just went through. Awesome course, by the way. We'll tell you a little bit more about it on the podcast. And then finally, Luke is going to share how he just won first place and I believe won $500 in an actual tournament, an inshore fishing tournament in a spot he had never fished before. And it was right after a nasty cold front came through. He's going to share all the tactics on how we got first place in the trout division using some of these same things we will teach you. So here it is. Please let us know what you think. Let us know if you want more of these, and we'll continue to start recording the video footage of these podcasts. Here you go. Pow! All right, folks, it's Joe Simons.
And Luke Simons.
We are back. If you can believe it, the Fish Strong podcast is back. And this time, it's 2018. We're going to try something new. Hopefully, this is recording the correct way. So if you're listening on the podcast, know that we're actually on YouTube as well with this. Hopefully, with a split screen is what we told it to do. This is our first time trying it, so I hope it worked. And if you're watching us on YouTube, then know that there's a podcast out there as well. You can listen to it whenever the heck you want to. And so recently, Luke, we posted a question in our Salt Strong Insider Club. And if you're not familiar with our club, this is something that's been going on for about a year and a half. And the last year, it really exploded. And quite honestly, it's kind of our whole business model now is taking care of our insiders. It's a place where we give all of our exclusive tips. We've teamed up with people like C.A. Richardson, which we're going to talk about a little bit today, and in his Trout Mastery course. We have two brand new pros coming on, two new pros that you probably know, people that are usually on TV that have now signed on with us to do exclusive tips and some courses. And really, it's just a place for inshore fishermen right now. It will expand over time, but right now it's really targeted to inshore fishermen just to help you become more consistent, more confident, to be able to find spots and avoid the dead zones, and quite honestly, just have more fun. It's a really tight-knit community. And all that being said, we posted a question in there about what they wanted to see in 2018, and a big thing that came up quite a few times was bringing the podcast back, wasn't it?
Yeah, I was surprised. Obviously, they're fun to do, but it was pretty cool to see that come up when it's really been kind of sadly now. It's a while since we've done it, so glad to be back in business.
Yeah, so that is going to be one of our New Year's resolutions, is to try to do one of these podcasts, if not 2 a month, then try to do it one every week. But 2 a month is kind of like our guaranteed minimum. That's what we've kind of written down as like our bare minimum goal. And we really enjoy doing them. And what's really staggering is the numbers. Like, we actually go look at some of these past numbers, and these old episodes, like some that are a year old, are still getting downloaded like crazy. I mean, our podcast is actually growing even though we weren't doing anything with it. So it is just another reminder that we need to keep doing these. And then next week, we already have next week planned out, so kind of excited about that one. I went to this Florida Writers Association event, and I'm part of this Florida Outdoor Writers Association membership, and they had a few people there who were in undergrads and some graduate students, and all of these people are in the marine biology, marine sciences field. And this one guy, it was a really fascinating presentation he gave, and he's at the University of Miami, and it was all about studying sharks and other fish that are now coming up into like canals and not even just canals, but like coming up into major cities. Like the fact that they've caught 14-foot hammerheads in like downtown Miami. And so it's kind of like the urbanization of fishing, that some of these monster fish and monster tarpon and stuff are coming way up and basically into civilization. And they're studying and tracking all this stuff and seeing exactly where they're going and where they're mating back there. It was really fascinating stuff. So we're going to talk to him next week.
All right, so what's in it for today, right?
I'm glad
who cares
you
about
asked.
next week, right? Let's do it today.
I'm glad you asked, Lukey. So today, we wanted to cover a topic that has been pretty hot within our Fish Strong group. That's the app we have. It's been hot in our Salt Strong Insider group, and it's also been a hot topic just in general on our Facebook wall of all of the people who are on there on the what's it called? The fishing tribe.
Yep.
Blanking. We have way too many Facebook groups, but it's all about catching trout and catching consistent trout during the winter. And I guess, Luke, let me ask you a question. Why has trout always come up as like the top subject? Why is that always the hot fish in the wintertime?
Well, I think one reason is because they're kind of everywhere, right? Like most areas with salt water in the United States has sea trout, and they're probably one of the easiest to catch. Just for people who want to just go out and catch fish, sea trout is a really good fish to target because they're year round. They don't travel too far, and once you know a few good spots, those spots will typically produce all year long. You just have to know how they shift around based on the seasonality. But in general, one good trout spot will typically be good for all the whole 12 months.
Cool. So this entire podcast, we are going to talk about trout in the wintertime, and really specifically how to catch trout after a cold front. Now, ironically, when we filmed the Trout Mastery course with Captain C.A. Richardson, it was in like late November, and that was that very first front that came through, like to the point where we were debating even going out. Like, remember, it was just crazy. That was when that massive storm came through, and we couldn't even get out till a little bit later, and yet we caught a ton of fish, and that was when CA filmed his Trout on Demand. And if you haven't invested in the Trout Mastery course, definitely go to saltstrong.com, go to the courses tab, and you'll see CA's Trout Mastery course there. And you can even get a couple free videos just for opting in, and you can watch 4 of his really cool tips. But he did this thing called Trout on Demand, and true to his word, he literally, I mean, how many? I don't remember how many we caught. I don't know. It was 10 after 10 after 10. I mean, we just all 4 of us were out there casting.
It was a lot. It was a lot of trout.
I say 80, and you say it was maybe a couple less. But anyhow, it was a ton of trout, and that was right after a cold front. So let's talk about that. Like, what happened? How did we do that so easily? Because CA made it seem effortlessly.
Well, I mean, there's obviously there's never just one thing, but just to go out and catch fish, which is what a lot of the questions we get are just people, hey, I'm taking out my kids or a boss or somebody new to fishing, and they know I fish a lot, and I just don't want to come home skunked, right? So that's more the Trout on Demand. When you're going after the gator trout, it's a little bit different. But as far as just going out and just consistently catching trout, it's really about just knowing that the kind of the schoolie trout, the smaller ones, in like the anywhere from like 12 inches to like 16, 17 inches, they typically hang out, especially in the wintertime, together. So if you find one, you're going to catch a lot. And the cool thing about wintertime is that as long as you know that the actual temperature is a big factor, that will give you a big advantage, especially if you take it to the next level and just think about how the temperature of water fluctuates, right? So for example, in a wintertime morning, like after a cold front, like the cold front that we just had, the shallow water, the shallow flats are going to be really cold, right? Because that's only, say, it's 2 or 3 feet of water that has been impacted by the air much more than, say, the depths, 5 through 8 at an 8-foot depth spot, right? So knowing that trout are seeking warmth, and they don't travel very far, if you have a good grass flat that's shallow, that's good during the warm months, those fish are typically just going to shift out there in the deeper water, right? They're going to be in the 5 to 8 foot depth water just to be warm. And if you find where they are, if you find those little spots, you're going to catch a bunch of trout. And that's really all we did that day during that course, that part of the course is we just found some deeper water. It was surrounding, there was a large grass flat surrounding this area, and it's basically where all the water funneled off of that flat. And those trout were just posted up, just sitting there right there. And literally we just anchored in one spot and we just caught fish after fish. None of them were huge. So it's not often the way to catch the really monster ones. But just to go out and just catch a bunch of fish and have fun for people really of all skill levels, especially just taking somebody out new, it's a ton of fun.
Yeah. And so what was the depth? Do you recall exactly where we were?
Well, where I positioned, you guys were out filming a different boat, and I knew about that area, so I positioned. We actually stopped for lunch, and so I positioned right on a point. And where I put the power pole down was about maybe 2.5 feet. 2 to 2.5 feet, and then it dropped down to probably 5 to 6. So it wasn't super deep, but it was still pretty good depth. And it was enough depth to have that water at the bottom be a little bit warmer than everywhere else. So that's where those trout were holding up.
Yeah, because I recall, and what was funny, we were all using different lures, so it wasn't just like we had a magic lure. It was like we found the honey hole, and I remember casting over just a little bit too far where it was 2 to 3 feet deep instead of 5 to maybe 7, and caught nothing. And then the next cast, you throw it right down the middle of that little channel, and it was boom, and it was automatic every single time pretty much. And so that's it, right? I mean, you're looking for areas with grass flats, with some moving water, and a little bit deeper right after the cold front, right? And usually you're going to find them. I mean, like to CA's point, he's like, we all think we're pretty good right now because we all just caught a crap load of fish. But the truth is, he's like, there's probably 900 of them down there. He's like, there are literally probably close to 1,000 trout all sitting down here in that one little channel. And it could be. I would have loved to taken a GoPro down there and to see how many fish were down there. But it was fun. It was also proof that you can go out the day of or the day after a really nasty cold front and still catch a lot of fish.
Yeah, and that exact game plan. That's sort of, I had that tournament over there that Gene hosted.
Oh yeah, let's talk about that tournament.
Yeah, so I basically just used that same exact philosophy and ended up winning the trout division, which was pretty cool. And I've never fished there before in my life. I was not expecting to win anything. It was up in Newport Richey, and I'd planned on Gene Hammond, one of our insiders, was hosting it, so we wanted to help and donated a lot of hats and everything. And so I was like, yeah, sure, I'll go up there and fish. So I'm very competitive, extremely competitive. So my plan was to go up there like a couple days before and actually scout out and fish it and have at least a game plan that I actually knew and was able to get on the water time. And just, life got in the way. I was flying out the next day to New York, so I was busy packing. But anyhow, I didn't have a chance to go up there. So I just showed up. A cold front had just pushed through. It was one of those days that you just really don't want to fish. And, it was, I can't remember the exact temperatures, but it went from like the day before was like 80 degrees. It's like beautiful weather. And then this day it was just cold. It was rainy. It was overcast. I don't think the sun came out all day. And I was on my paddleboard, so I didn't have time to mess with the boat. So I took my paddleboard. So I had very, very low expectations, right? I'd never been there before. There's probably, 30 people in it. But anyhow, so I just went out and just started paddling around, and I just had a game plan, right, where I knew that depth was a big factor. I knew that the warm water was what I was seeking. So I started out with one little hole in mind that I saw on Google Maps, and it was a bust, total bust, didn't catch a thing. The water was much shallower than I was expecting. It was only like 3 feet deep.
And what kind of lure were you using there?
There I was using, it was only 3 feet, and it was surrounded by like a foot depth of water. So I was using a little DOA jerk shad, or I guess cow jerk is the term for it.
Yep.
A 4-inch one with a split tail. I have a lot of good luck with that during the colder months, but I didn't catch. I had one bite in that hole and then nothing. So then I paddled out. I knew there's a big flat a little bit further away, a big grass flat, and it looked awesome on Google Maps. There's oyster bars on it, and it was like exactly what I like to see, but it was pretty low tide then. And I get out there, and there was a kayaker already on it, and then in the deeper zone, there was two guys in a canoe fishing it. So I kind of, I stayed a good distance from them, maybe a couple hundred yards, and I was just looking around. There's mullet everywhere. So just for trout, seeing mullet is a big plus. So I was confident that there'd be some fish around, but I was paddling around looking for signs of bigger fish and didn't really see much. So fished it for a little bit, and then wind was just crushing me. I was having a hard time battling that. So I was catching that. It was like getting like 9:30 or so, and I was literally just I think I caught like one ladyfish, and so I was like really deciding, okay, like should I just call it quits and then go home and just pack and just at least prepare for my trip. But then I got started going to the canals because that whole area that was all shallow water around the whole flat, and I couldn't fish the deeper stuff, but I didn't see those guys in the canoe. I kept looking over at them. I didn't see any of them catching anything. So I decided to go check out the canals that obviously were deeper water. But there's a lot of boat traffic, so I was a little bit hesitant to try it. But sure enough, I get there, and there's one spot in particular where the current kind of like eddies around a curve. And I made a cast in there, caught a grouper. So I was, a little grouper. I was kind of surprised there. Then next cast, I caught what ended up being the tournament winning fish. It was a 20-inch trout, which isn't huge, but on like a day like that where a lot of people didn't catch much, that actually held. But so I caught that 20-inch trout on a there. It was deeper water, so I was using a gulp shrimp rigged on a jig head, and caught that trout. Measured it, took the picture, and all that stuff. It was a photo release, and I just sat there, and so I ended up, it was too windy to control myself on the paddleboard, so I just pulled over to some nearby rocks, and I just tied the paddleboard to myself, and I just stood on those rocks, and I just stood in one spot and kept casting that area, and I caught a 19-inch trout next, and then I caught a couple 17-inchers, a lot of like 15, 16, some bluefish, some ladyfish, really a lot of stuff, and I literally just stood on some rocks that were right on like one of the main channels going in and out. And so a boat would pass me, and I would cast right behind it to catch a fish. It was I rarely fish in areas with that much boat traffic, but I guess those fish just had nowhere else to go, and they were just holding there. So anyhow, it was a shock to do that and to actually end up winning that thing. But it was just fun. I had a good day fishing, and just from talking to people afterwards, a lot of people struggled, but a lot of those people I was asking what they were doing, and they were spending their time up in the shallows, up in the shallow flats. And so I think it was just that temperature factor that really, really hindered their results.
Yeah. So big question, how much money did you win for your 20-inch trout?
Yeah, it was $500.
Cool.
So yeah, that was again like very, very low expectations. I was literally just thinking about just pulling the plug and calling it a day. But yeah, glad I ended up sticking it out. And so that was the morning, right? But then once it got warmer, I really wanted to catch the slam. Like it was a bigger prize for the slam. It was a really cool looking trophy, and so I wanted to win the slam. You had to catch a legal snook, plus a snook or plus a redfish plus a trout. So I had the trout, had a ton of trout, and toward the end, I caught a couple smaller snook up in once I started going back to the shallower water around some rocks. And so I was just like, let me just get a redfish, and then I'll work on the keeper snook last. So I went back up to where that flat was with all those mullet. I knew there was going to be some fish there, and sure enough, later in the day, once once the water got a little bit warmer, those fish were pushing up further and further, and I ended up catching a redfish on top water, and it was like a 20-inch red. And so then it was all about getting that snook, and I caught a couple dinks, and I just couldn't get that keeper snook, and nobody ended up catching. I think I was the only one that caught a slam at all, but nobody caught like the legal slam. So it was just a tough day fishing, but had I not just thought about, and it was really like that CA's course was a big help because that kind of
ironically we filmed it was it the week before?
It was the week before, yeah. And so, I was, obviously there the whole time, and CA was really harping on. I rarely, before that, even now, I rarely fish deeper water, like 8, probably 6 feet is like the deepest I typically fish. And so I was just thinking about his tutorial on there, and I was like, well, let me just spend some more time in the canal. So I did actually, I went around a couple areas before I found that one spot, but the fact that I just knew that was a factor, and I just started testing out, the windy areas, like the wind protected canals without any boat traffic, and then I finally found the right mix of current and depth, and that's where all the fish were. And again, had I not been thinking of that as a factor, I would have just completely, not. I would have probably called it a day and just headed home.
So were you retrieving any slower than normal? Like, were you retrieving slower than you would like in the summertime?
Yeah, I mean up there, and especially in the morning, and I was only using a 1/8 ounce jig head, so I kind of had to keep it down. But I signaled over some other people because I didn't think I had a chance. I didn't think that 20th trout was gonna win. I didn't think I had a chance to catch one bigger. So as boats were coming by, as like I recognized people, there were a decent amount of insiders in there. So I was telling them about the spot, and so there was a few of us fishing it. And I was catching the most because I think I was just taking a little bit slower, and some of them had like popping corks with like shrimp on it, and so they were just covering that the top of the water, and the fish were just cold, they're lethargic, so they weren't going to go up 4 feet to go get that shrimp. They really wanted it right there in their face. So I was just casting up current, letting it fall all the way down, and just doing the little double twitch method, and they were picking up. It was soft bites, but once you got the hook in them, they were actually very energetic. So they were fighting. Like that first trout, like I thought it was gonna be like a 25 incher when I saw its head come up and shake, do the trout shake, and I was super excited. And then I got a little bit closer, and I was still pumped just to have a fish that was respectable, but never would have thought it was gonna place.
Did you get it mounted? What's that behind you there?
No, that was from the East Coast tournament stuff. So that was in the past. I actually have the trophy over here. I had it on the wall there next to me. So this is this is it. There, I'll get up close. First place trout.
It's awesome.
Yeah, it was cool. But again, it all just comes down to just knowing, having a game plan and thinking more about the spots than the lure selection. So like if I was covering that spot at that depth, if I was covering the right depth at that spot with any lure, I'm sure it would have caught fish. I just happened to have gulp shrimp with jig heads.
Yep.
So it's less about lures and it's more about just knowing where to go and why to go there.
Yeah. And just FYI, all of our insiders, anyone in the Insider Fishing Club, they get to see all of our spots, including like that spot where Luke was at the tournament.
Yeah.
And we break down all of the spots all year long and even have a trend analyzer. And so I bring that up because we have a lot of YouTube videos out there for free. I think we've had like 14 or 15 million views. So we get a lot of comments, a lot of stuff from our blogs, and people always like, hey, I need help. I'm in this area. Can you help me out? And that's what we tell them every time is, hey, we've built all this stuff for you, and it's 27 cents a day. That's less than a cup of coffee to literally get all of our trends, like to literally see all of our fishing reports. And this stuff works from Texas all the way up to North Carolina. And I think that's another big reason that whole Insider Fishing Club is growing like it has been, because it truly does work. And we've had other stories like this, quite a few, of people who were weekend warriors and some were beginners who are now competing in some tournaments and even winning money. I mean, we've had a couple really cool check pictures of guys that have said, hey, I want to thank you. This is stuff I learned in the Insider Club and stuff I've learned on CA's course. And that was my big takeaway, because I had a really cool experience, because me as the producer of the show, I was in CA's boat, and during breaks, like lunch break, like you mentioned, we always kind of try to catch a couple fish and get some B-roll, and I was sitting up on the front casting. CA's up on the back platform, and he's watching me and kind of coaching me along anytime he sees me do something really dumb, and he kept saying, Joe, slow it down. Slow it down. And every time I slid it down, boom, I'd start getting strikes again. And especially after that cold front. I think from what he told me, and I believe this to be true in my experience, I'm not on the water as much as CA, obviously, but he's like, Joe, in most cases, even in the summertime, in most cases, we're going too fast. And in most cases, if you just slow down a little bit, you'll end up getting more strikes. And he's like, that's what I see with most all of my clients. And it's tough, because you want to go fast and you want to kind of you want to cover as much ground as possible, and you want to get your lure in front of as many fish as possible, but sometimes you just need to slow down, especially after a cold front like that.
Yeah, that's true. But if you don't know where to go, you do have to get if you're in an area you're not catching anything, then it's time to go. It's time to pick up a move and try something else. So I go pretty fast until I actually find some fish, and that's when I really slow it down. Especially when exploring a brand new area where you have no idea like that day I had really no idea what would be good and what wouldn't. So I was spending like 20 minutes. I fished that one spot for 20 minutes. That hole, nothing was there. So I got up and just paddled another couple miles, and then fished that area for a while, and then tried out some different depths, watching the birds, and that's when I finally went back to the canals.
Cool. Is that your dog, by the way?
Yeah, that's Otis causing trouble down there.
Jeepers. Put that thing in a kennel while you're doing a podcast. Well, either put him in a kennel or like he needs to be in the video so we can all at least enjoy his antics. So
Yeah, I don't know what he's eating, some trash or something. Who knows?
that dog is loud. So what is like your go-to covering new territory lure? I know CA is a real big fan of paddle tail. It doesn't even matter what brand, but just having that paddle tail because you can move it a little bit faster and still cover a lot of ground. What do you use?
I mean, I use a lot of different things. The paddle tail's one in particular. I got my rods right back here. One that's a good safe bet. I mean, really that gulp shrimp rigged on a jig head.
A couple more rods.
Yeah. I've been testing out so part of the insiders, I test out rods and reels and just let people know what's good based, regardless of brand or any kind of stuff. And, so one lure.
Whoa. What is that? A bait caster?
Yeah. I've been starting to I'm dabbling. But anyhow, so these little jig heads, like a little red jig head, this is the jig head I was using during that tournament to catch that trout. I just had a gulp shrimp rigged on it instead of this little paddle tail.
Yep.
I think this one's made by Z-Man. But yeah, this is a safe bet, right? If I'm covering water that's 3 feet or more, I'm using a jig of some sort, just because I like them, I trust them, and for me, I always recommend just go with what you know. Like just go with the lure that works for a specific depth, and just use it. And because if you're in the right area, targeting the right depth, the actual lure isn't nearly as important as the actual depth in the spot. So if you get those two right, the lure is way less important. But yeah, so if I'm covering deeper water and traveling and I guess exploring, then I'm using a jig. If I'm in the shallower water, then I'll use a soft plastic with one of those weighted hooks. I think I got one of those back here too. Yeah, so one of these guys. This one, I've been testing out this paddle tail recently. It's been pretty cool little bait. But I guess for those podcasters can't see it, but what I like is a weighted hook because it helps me just keep the bait shallow while also having a little bit of weight so that there's less risk of helicoptering, which is bad, and it's just a good little hook. So this is owner Twist Lock is who makes it, and you can put any kind of soft plastic on here, even like little 3-inch gulp shrimp work. But I typically like a 4 to 5 inch split tail type lure for clear water, and then for darker water, I dabble with these paddle tails.
It's a big paddle tail.
Yeah, the trout were. So that same day of the tournament was the first day I've tested out this one in particular, and I caught a bunch of trout on it, especially once it got a little bit warmer. And later in the day, the bite picked up, and I caught a couple 18, 19 inches on there, just swimming over flats.
Didn't you just catch like a 30-something red on that thing last?
Yeah.
Placida or somewhere near there?
Yeah, it's been a fun little lure.
And I bring that up because I think that's another thing that all of our Insider Fishing Club members like is that paddle tail right there. You showed it to me. I've used it before and caught fish. Actually, just last weekend with Dad, we used the same lure. And it's like a no-name lure, right? I mean, it's like, I don't know, a couple dollars for the whole pack. And this is not about a lure discussion, but the whole point of it is we show you it works. We don't accept sponsorships. We actually rejected a couple sponsorships, like pretty good ones recently, and we don't accept them because we want to be the group out there at Salt Strong and Fish Strong that is just unbiased and telling you like it is. And you'll see some of our videos on YouTube. We'll do just independent reviews of like a specific product, but inside of the Insider Fishing Club, we actually take all the products side by side, like 5 or 6 different rods, 4 or 5, 6, sometimes 7 different reels, different lures, and say, here's the ones that really work, here's the ones that are a waste of money or overpriced, etc. And we just kind of tell it like it is. I feel like that's our area where we don't purposely bash anyone because that doesn't really help the industry, but we'll flat out tell you if something is overpriced or if you can get a better deal using the same type of thing somewhere else. So.
Yeah, and that's not, I mean, obviously, the what's good and what's bad for lures isn't really that, financially valuable because, lures are a little bit less expensive. But that sort of information on rods and reels, that's where there's a lot of savings.
Yeah.
So for the insiders, just to not buy the wrong rod or the wrong reel, will more than pay for that insider. But that lure in particular, that paddle tail lure, it's Southeastern Tackle. Is this a shop nearby that I really like, and they're starting to make their own lures. So that was like one of their prototypes. So I got some. They're like, I think it's like $2.99 a pack for like 7, which is crazy good deal compared to like gulps, which are like a little over $1 a piece. So I've got those, and sure enough, next time I went in there, I bought like 7 or 8 packs last time I was in, just to make sure I wasn't going to run out, because I gave some to Dad. And anyhow, so they're good lures, and so far that's been one of my favorite paddle tails. But I'll obviously be testing out a lot more. I got some like Gambler ones, and some like Zoom makes some. So all of them have their pros and cons. But yeah, so far that one from Southeastern has been really good.
Cool. So we talked about just trout in general after a cold front. And another thing that I learned on CA's course is that normally when you find we'll call them dink trout, those ones that are sub 20 inches, you're usually not going to find many gator trout around with them. Normally the smaller trout are all just in there tightly together, and the gator trout are somewhere else. Where are they? Like, how do we target gator trout after a cold front?
Yeah, everywhere's a little bit different. CA's course, like CA really nails it down, because it always depends on, how cold it is and how far up in front of and beyond. But in general, a good rule is to find an area with a lot of big mullet, and there's going to be big trout nearby. If there's an area that has a whole lot of big mullet that are actually there for most of the year, there's typically going to be some big trout in the area, because those big trout, they're all about ambushing something preferably big, so they don't have to waste a lot of energy eating a bunch of small stuff. So yeah, if there's pretty much most of my big trout spots that has big mullet there most of the year.
Cool. Yeah, that was good. And he also talks just a lot about the habits of these trout, because you really need to study the fish just like you do with the insiders. I mean, you really study and hone in on the biology of these fish, which help you predict where they're going to be. And I think CA mentioned he's like 90% of the fish like in 10% of the areas. And he said those big gator trout, those big fat boys and fat mamas, I mean, they're only eating maybe once every few days, maybe once a week in the wintertime. He's like, they're looking for big meals, and it's usually going to be big mullet. And he's like, you'll be shocked at how big of a mullet a big monster gator trout can eat.
Yeah, when I was doing tournaments back in, when I was doing those tournaments over on the East Coast, I mean, you have to, if you don't have a 26-inch trout, you're most likely not going to even place. And so we were, first year we did all artificial, and that's my favorite way to fish. I don't have the patience to sit and wait. But so the second year, we're like, okay, let's see, we got 3rd place overall, and so let's see if we can beat that. So we did all light bait. And we weren't using little small shrimp. We were using like 8-inch mullet, and that was our bait for trout. And it was shocking how many small trout we actually caught with those. Small being like 18. Some were, I think all of them were at least over the slot, but we caught some like 16-inch trout on like an 8-inch mullet. And so those trout are not afraid to eat big baits. And we even caught some trout on like those big 10-inch, the big, what does Lunker Dog call them? The
hog legs.
Yeah, we were literally catching trout on hog legs, and it's just because that, if they can fit in their mouth, they're going to try to eat it, and it's a whole lot of fun because they usually miss it the first couple times. So you'll hear, especially those big trout, it's a big trout. It's like a bomb going off, and it'll go off maybe 3 or 4 times before your line will start shooting out. So it's a huge rush, and so when I do live bait fish, I typically use the bigger baits, just because if I'm going to do live bait, I'm just going to get the real big ones, and using those big mullet is a real fun way to do it.
Cool. All right, so let's wrap it up. One thing I really liked about CA's course, at the end of every module, he does this what you really need to know. It's just basically a summary. So catching trout after a cold front, what do we really need to know, Lukey?
Yeah, I just need to know to go to one of your areas that you know hold trout for most of the year, and just find the deeper zones of it, and then just fish those zones, fish the deeper water, slow it down, and just make sure that you have a lure that you trust to cover whatever depth it is, right? So if it's 8 feet deep, you want to be right there in the face. So that's why I personally like those jigs. But again, as long as you're down there, and as long as they're if you can know how to trigger a strike with artificial, slow it down, give it some quick little darts just to make it look like it's a injured bait fish or a scared shrimp, and that'll just help trigger their predator instinct, right? Just to go after the weak, and so just doing that. I find that doing that will help me catch more fish than just a straight retrieve with the paddle tail, is to give it some odd looking action to make it look scared or weak.
Cool. And are you looking for, in a perfect world, are you looking for an area with some seagrass around the area, or do you care?
Yeah, I mean, I like seagrass, oyster bars, docks, and really, the more different types of structure in one area, the better. So it doesn't have to be seagrass, doesn't have to be oyster bars. But for big trouts especially, I really like the combination of seagrass and oyster bars.
Cool. Awesome. Well, that is it. I'm looking at the time here. It flew by. It's good to be back, Lukey. It's good to be back.
Good to be back. Good to be back. I'll be curious on how this the video portion of it turned out.
Yeah,
I think it'll be good.
Hopefully people are actually watching us on YouTube.
Yeah, but also this will be on our website. So if you haven't yet been active on our website, this is where we host all of our best stuff. So this will be on the website for sure. Really, our YouTube channel is kind of just there to supplement our website. So if you like the YouTube stuff, definitely check out the website. That's going to be all of the best of the best info.
Yeah,
I'll get this crazy dog in line next time.
Yeah, and if you're into catching trout, like really want to take your game up a notch and just want to become more consistent all year long, then please go check out CA's course. And he told us, he's like, Joe, we're going to put the biggest, baddest, boldest guarantee on there, and the guarantee is if you aren't catching more trout over the next 365 days, you shoot us an email and he refunds you every single bet. You literally don't have to pay a penny unless you really feel like it's completely taking your game to a new level. And it works. I mean, the testimonials we're getting in off that thing are just amazing. And it worked for you. I mean, you have the coolest story that just a week after that, on a day you were about to call it, you end up winning $500. So pretty cool.
Yeah, because the cool thing again is for people like we had a testimonial come in was a couple days ago, like a guy who's been a actual guide for like 30 plus years,
fishing guide, yeah.
And so it's great for newbies because it just covers just the things you need to know. But even for really advanced anglers, there's a lot of just like little small things that you're like kind of like the ahas, like, oh yeah, like even if you're doing it, you never really know why you're doing it. It really is helpful for even advanced anglers to go check it out, because it just, again, like at least it earned me $500 right away. And it's never about, if it was only just to do one thing, like if it was as simple as just doing one thing, you're guaranteed to catch a bunch of fish. That's just not the case, or else everybody would be catching fish. It's all the little small things. And so CA did an amazing job of going through all those little small things across regions. He talks about different seasons and tidal flows. And so once you put all those small things together, that is what's going to be the big difference maker.
Cool. So that's it. Go check that out. saltstrong.com. Up at the top, there's courses, and you'll also see a tab for our Insider Fishing Club. If you have not joined that, please do. Once again, less than a cup of coffee a day also comes with that big, bold guarantee. Until next time, Lukey, we'll be talking to Robert from University of Miami about these urbanization of these big game fish. So it should be and sharks in particular. He's a big shark dude, so it should be cool.
Excellent.
Peace out.